Hey guys, Let's Play here. So, a lot of people have asked me on videos, what's the best summon, who should I invest in, and it's a really hard question to answer. It's a hard question to answer because the summons, you use your summons on situation, not for like an overall use, and that way you are more optimized to handle a certain situation than you are if you just spam Ifrit everywhere. So I thought I'd go through the summons, talk about their plus points, their down points, and then situations where they're actually quite good to be used. So first and foremost, we'll start off with our very first summon, the Chocobo. So, Chocobo is a very basic kind of summon. It increases the party's HP by 50, which isn't all that much. In fact, it should be a lot higher than that, to be honest. 50 is nothing. And it's just a very weak 300 brave attack melee when you use it. Now, one of the best things about Chocobo is that it charges very quick, and the more you level it up, the faster it gets to charging. So it's quite good, but in that sense, you're only using that kind of speed in endgame content. When you have characters that can deal insane amount of damage each turn, that's when Chocobo really comes to life. Unfortunately, it's not a really good early summon because even though it charges up very fast, it doesn't do that much damage when you use the summon, and you can only get at max 5 turns. So that isn't very good, unfortunately, because those 5 turns when you're at the early stage of the game goes by a lot quicker than you think, and therefore you have to really maximize those turns to the best of your ability. Chocobo is quite a hard summon to use quite early on, but like again, I want to reiterate, it is probably one of the more used summons in endgame multiplayer combat because of how fast it charges. I was doing some multiplayer battles on my JP account, and almost 2 out of 3 people had a Chocobo summon maxed up to level 20. So that's kind of the main point. It's not something you want to be using now. You want to keep leveling up, and when it comes to the point where the game becomes more multiplayer focused, you'll be in a good position because you can have a summon that you can charge really quickly and use. Next, we'll be talking about Slyph, which is the very second summon we get. Now, Slyph, its ability lowers debuff odds by 10% when your initial brave is higher. That blessing isn't very useful because the bosses that do inflict debuffs have a very high percentage of doing it anyway, and even with a max Slyph, still can't stop them from dealing debuffs. So unfortunately, it's a very useless blessing. But its ability is quite handy and gets better the more you level it up. So it restores HP and Brave to the party, but it starts off at being a very small amount. But it will get bigger and bigger as the game progresses, and it is actually quite good. Like I said, other than Chocobo, Slyph is another widely used summon because not only will it heal everyone so that people who've taken hit damage can get healed, it also gives Brave to the party as well, so that little bit is very helpful when you're trying to speed kill a boss as quickly as possible. And yeah, like Chocobo, it also summons very quickly, so you can get it up really quick, and that's why it's used in multiplayer. It's more used than Chocobo, but it's still a quite a good summon for that. But unfortunately, it's okay for early game content. It's better than Chocobo, mostly because of the heal and Brave to the party, and also it grants end wind as well, so enemies who are weak to wind, your neutral attacks will deal wind damage instead, and it will be good for hitting that weakness. But there aren't really many enemies in the game that are really weak to wind, and when they are, they're weak to range weapons as well, so almost the time anyway, so it's not all that great, but it's okay. It's a nice thing to have. Again, like Chocobo though, you only get 5 turns when you probably level it up, and you don't get that big of a max brave bonus as well, so that's a shame. But it's still better than nothing, and these two are very good for this for late game content where JP kind of is now. Next, we'll be talking about Shiva. So Shiva's blessing is it raises speed when brave is less than your initial brave. Now when you level up Shiva, that will shoot up to being of 20%, and you will notice I love this blessing. It's one of the best blessings out of all summons in my opinion, because it lets you act quicker after you use HP attacks, really. So that's when your brave will be less than your initial brave, and therefore people who use brave to HP attacks are really good with Shiva, because that means they can act quicker, and sometimes they can avoid potential break. Shiva does a high amount of ice damage to an enemy, and it grants the party N ice. Now, ice is one of the more common weaknesses as well, so that's quite handy as well. Unfortunately, though, Shiva and the rest, they do not and ever will be able to charge as fast as Chocobo and Slyph. So that is unfortunately a drawback to them. But eventually you go up to having 6 turns, and those 6 turns are really good when you have the summon up, because that means you have the potential to do a lot of damage during that period of time as well. Also, the max brave bonus will go up to quite a high value as well, so more brave is always good for the party. But one of the problems with Shiva's blessing is that if you have a character who has low turn delay as well, sometimes it can mess up the turn order when you have the summon up as well, which means you have to be very careful how you use your characters when you have the summon up, and that's something to take special note of. But yeah, Shiva's really good for ice sweep bosses and for slow bosses as well, because you'll get turns in and you'll be able to deal lots of damage before they can act on their turn, and that's why I like Shiva. Shiva's probably out of the main summons like one of my favorite, if not my favorite. I always default to Shiva, and then if that's not the situation, then I go to someone else as well. But my first thought, because I use a lot of brave HP attackers, Shiva is my go-to girl. Ifrit. Ifrit increases the attack when your HP is at max. Now that 5%, when Ifrit gets leveled up, will go up to about 20%, and you really will notice like the damage you deal. Like Ifrit is very good for characters who deal multiple hits, mostly because all those hits will end up doing a lot more damage, and that is really good because you'll be able to break enemies much easier than usual. And if you have a brave to HP attacker who has multiple hits, then they'll be dealing lots of damage. Like Terra and Ida, for example, really benefit from this. But the problem with Ifrit's blessing is that you have to be at max HP. Even if you take 1 damage, you'll lose the benefits. And I'm sure you guys know by now, there are bosses who, as soon as they get their brave back after a break, they'll HP attack straight away, and that would be annoying because you will then lose the blessing, and that is quite a pain. Now, characters like Rem has her niche here because she can just heal you back up, which means that you can keep your blessing, and that's one good thing about Rem. So, yeah, she's not all bad. She's not useless. She does have her uses. All characters have their uses after all, and yeah, Rem found a use here, which is quite good for her. So good on you, Rem. Now, Ifrit is a magical attack for fire and grants the party end fire. Well, when I say end element, that means that it's turning their normal non-elemental attacks into that element. So like I said, for Shiva, I said and ice, so all non-elemental attacks become ice elemental attacks. So that's good. Fire is one of the more common weaknesses as well, so you'll be able to exploit a lot of enemies who are weak to fire, and that is good. Especially with the blessing as well, that means that Ifrit is just dealing tons of raw damage, and that is absolutely fantastic. Like, that's when you want to use Ifrit. Well, you want to use Ifrit to finish battles quite quickly. You don't want to have a battle last because you will be taking HP damage, and Rem can only cure so much. So if you want to take the enemy out as quickly as possible, then Ifrit is your man to do that. He's quite good for dailies as well because of how weak the enemies are and how easy it is to kill them. So you can just break them quite easy, gain high amounts of brave, and then just finish him off. But yeah, like Shiva, his summon speed will never quite match the heights of Chocobo or Sylph, but it's not all that bad. It's not all that bad. And then eventually turns will go up to 6, which is quite good as well. Combine enemy who's weak to fire with the blessing, and yeah, you will be doing tons of damage. And that is why I really like Ifrit a lot. He is my second go-to summon after Shiva. If I need to just be more offensive, then I just go for Ifrit, and I just have to manage my play when I'm attacking. I'm careful about breaking the enemy because you have to be careful. If you're more mindful, if you don't always go for the break, then sometimes enemy will just brave attack a lot more than they will HP attack, and you can prolong the effects of Ifrit without having to need a healer to do so. And yeah, max brave bonus is higher than Chocobo and Sylph, and you will notice the difference as you level up Ifrit. Next up is Ramuh. Ramuh is my least liked summon of all in the game. I find his blessing to be quite hard to exploit. So basically, it raises defense when your HP is less than half of your max HP. And if you're getting this blessing, then something must be going very wrong in that battle. Or you are taking way too many HP attacks. And if you're taking way too many HP attacks to get to that point, then that means that you're either taking an enemy that you can't, you should not be fighting, because you cannot be taking so much HP damage that you've gone to being less than 50%. And besides, getting a defense increase isn't all that great, because at the end of the day, like, if that boss attacks somebody else who's at high HP, what does you having more defense do for you? Nothing. It's not it's not actually that useful in that kind of grand scheme of things. And that's kind of why I almost never use Ramuh. So the only time I do use Ramuh is when an enemy is weak to lightning, and I can just use that an element there. But of all the ones, I think Ramuh is not that great. And if you heal up, then you'll lose his blessing. So again, not all that good. His ability is a magical lightning attack, and it grants a party and lightning, so very good against machine enemies, because they mostly always tend to be weak to the lightning. There are a few exceptions, of course, but rule of thumb is that if it's a mechanical, it's weak to lightning, and therefore you want to be using Ramuh just to explore that weakness, and that's his only good benefit. Like Ifrit and Shiva, summon speed won't be as fast as Sylph or Chocobo, but yeah, turns will go up to 6, and the max brave bonus is gonna be really good once you level up Ramuh as well. But overall, I'm not a fan of Ramuh, and if you guys are finding ways to be good with Ramuh, let me know. Let's get the discussion going. But yeah, I'm just not a fan, and I really don't like to use Ramuh all that much. Finally, we move on to the king of all espers, Odin. So, Odin's blessing is that it raises attack by 20% when HP is less than 20% of the max HP. This one is, once again, Cecil benefits massively from Odin. Oh my gosh. Unlike Ramuh, what is Cecil having more defense going to do for him? And that's why I didn't mention Cecil there. But for Odin, it just works and synergizes so well. Because you'll be reducing your HP when you're using your darkness abilities, it's very easy to hit the less than 20 HP situation to get the attack bonus, and then you'll be doing even more damage with Cecil, and he becomes a real monster with Odin. I think they intended for that to happen if you play Final Fantasy IV and remember how you get Odin. But yeah, that is it. Other than that, if your characters are getting to that point, then you're going to be in trouble. Like, boss is owning you at that point if you are getting your characters to be in their range for that attack buff. So it's very hard to use as well, and why I'm not really a fan of using Odin other than with Cecil. If you don't have Cecil, and I've just changed the pronunciation, I don't know why, but yeah, if you don't have Cecil, then Odin is that blessing is really hard to make use of. But Odin's ability Zantetsuken is quite good actually. So it's just a melee attack, non-elemental, but it has a chance to instantly break the enemy. So if your enemy is getting way too much brave and you're like, oh no, what's going on? You can use Odin and have a good chance to just break him right there and then. And that can swing the tide of the battle and swing it back in your favor. So while it does say low odds of break, in my experience, I've been quite lucky with Odin. So I'm quite happy with Odin's break chances. I don't think it's as low the game makes it out to be. But then when you have things like this, it's purely anecdotal. And my experiences could be completely different from the experiences of somebody else. Also, when you have the summon up, characters who use swords and great swords get an attack boost as well. So that's really cool as well. So you want to be having a party of mainly sword and great sword users to maximize the benefits of Odin. So like Cloud comes to mind, Cecil as well, Squall too. Like 3 characters that I can think of off the top of my head who benefit really well and just are insane damage dealers, and that's really good too. Again, like the other guys, it's slow and it won't ever reach the speed of Chocobo or Slyph as well, unfortunately. And turns will eventually go up to 6, and that will make a difference as well with the max spray bonus. One little tip though that I'd like to give you guys is if you have like Cloud or Cecil in your party, they really do speed up the summon, because if you launch the enemies, each action taken in the air increases the summon gauge by a little bit, and once they hit the wall as well, then the summon gauge goes up a bit as well. So Cloud and Cecil, then their launching abilities really help speed up the summon gauge. So that's a little tip to you guys. It makes them much more popular as well in multiplayer. If people are switched on, that is. If they're not, then they won't bother. But yeah, people who are switched on and want to kill the boss as quickly as possible will love you when you have Cloud or Cecil, because you can just launch the enemy, everyone hits the enemy in the air, and then the summon gauge charges up super quick. Like, for example, like in my JP game, like I've had boss fights end in like 10 turns because the Cloud player would just keep using Finishing Touch, and we just kept getting summon gauge quite quickly, and we just spam our summons in multiplayer. And you know how summons can be quite broken if everyone uses it one after the other. So that's one little tip out there for the guys who think, oh, okay, so these guys don't summon as quickly. So yeah, Cloud and Cecil can make Ifrit, Shiva, Ramuh, and Odin a bit more viable as well. But yeah, these 4 are much better for story content and single player content, because a lot of the time you will have long battles, and therefore you can charge them up and use their effects to a lot better degree than you can with Chocobo and Slyph. And because you get those 6 turns, and a higher max spray bonus as well, you can end up dealing a lot more damage. And that's kind of why I really focus on using these 4 in single player content, but they never come with me on multiplayer content. But yeah, that's just my review of all the starting 6 summons. As the game progresses, we'll be getting more summons, and I will do a review video for each summon that we get as the game progresses. If you have any further questions or have anyone to start a discussion, use the comment section. I hope you guys know that. I hope you guys trust me that when I say that I do like to interact with everyone who comments, and whilst it can be quite slow sometimes because of real life, I do try to have a conversation with you all, because it's actually been quite fun. That's one of the things I do quite like, is that somehow I've managed to attract very nice people to watch my videos who always comment and stuff, and it's always nice talking with you. But yeah, There's Let's Play. I hope you guys all enjoyed this video. If you're watching and you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button. Give it a little love, and I will give you a little love as well. But yeah, thank you guys all very much for watching. If you got this far, much appreciated that you take your time to watch me, and the feedback is always welcome. I also appreciate it because I'm a person who always strives to be as best I can, and I'm in an echo chamber by myself. I'm gonna think I'm the bee's knees, but if you guys have any kind of feedback as well, please let me know. If you disagree with some of my assessments of summons, let me know as well. But yeah, this is Let's Play, over and out. Bye bye.